So you know that Dr. Fauci is a criminal, and if you don't know, you should read RFK Jr.'s book because he's a criminal and a liar, and they funded the gain of function, which a lot of people believe led to that virus being created and escaping from the Wuhan Viral Institute or Institute of Virology. They're now pushing vaccines on kids, on children under 5, over 5, and
boosters, right?
What's that?
It's the boosters now.
The boosters. They're even pushing boosters, and now they have there's no science to back this up, and the science that they have is very weak. And here's what Dr. Fauci goes up against Rand Paul, and Rand Paul again is able to reveal that Dr. Fauci is basing his stuff on nothing. Here we go.
Dr. Fauci, the government recommends everybody take a booster over age 5. Are you aware of any studies that show reduction in hospitalization or death for children who take a booster?
Now, that's a good question because there aren't any. So let's see if he answers. Let's see how he answers. Let's see if Dr. Fauci is going to be forthcoming and give a straight answer to a straight question. Let's see.
Right now, there's not enough data that has been accumulated, Senator Paul, to indicate that that's the case. I believe that the recommendation that was made was based on the assumption that if you look at the morbidity and mortality of children.
So he just said, so basically what he should have said was no. What they're recommending those for is based on an assumption, not science. He just said it. They're basing it on an assumption. A frickin' medical treatment for children who are at almost no risk from COVID. Again, remember, children are at almost no risk of COVID. It's so low you can't even quantify it. That's
from being hospitalized, you mean?
Yes.
Right.
From hospitalization or serious illness. Children's risk of that is so low you can't even quantify it.
Within each of the age groups, 0 to 5, 5 to 11.
Right. So there are no studies, and Americans should all know this. There are no studies on children showing a reduction in hospitalization or death with taking a booster.
So now you just saw the number one medical official in the country dodging a direct question from a senator about are there any studies scientific to back up this stuff you're recommending? And he just dodged that question. And again, no comedians are going to have a joke about that except me. None of them. No late night comics are going to be upset about that. Jimmy Kimmel and the rest of Stephen Colbert, none of them are going to give a shit about this. That they're pushing medicine on people on children without scientific studies. And the news is going to report this as Dr. Fauci stood up for himself against Rand Paul. That's how they're going to report it. And that's how my jag-off fucking comedy friends are going to fucking report it too.
Who do you hang out with? I'm just joking. Oh, there's jokes, by the way.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh, here it is. Oh. So let's play. I want to play that again. And there's more to this.
Dr. Fauci, the government recommends everybody take a booster over age 5. Are you aware of any studies that show reduction in hospitalization or death for children who take a booster?
Right now, there's not enough data that has been accumulated, Senator Paul, to indicate that that's the case. I believe that the recommendation that was made was based on the assumption that if you look at the morbidity and mortality of children within each of the age groups, 0 to 5, 5 to 11.
Right. So there are no studies, and Americans should all know this. There are no studies on children showing a reduction in hospitalization or death with taking a booster. The only studies that were permitted, the only studies that were presented were antibody studies. So they say if we give you a booster, you make antibodies. Now, a lot of scientists would question whether or not that's proof of efficacy of a vaccine. If I give you 10 or if I give a patient 10 mRNA vaccines and they make protein each time, or they make antibody each time, is that proof that we should give 10 boosters, Dr. Fauci?
No, I think that is somewhat of an absurd exaggeration.
Okay, he's going to say that's an absurd exaggeration. So
Yes,
the
he's
next
making a point.
so the next logical question would be, well, if it's not 10 boosters, would it be 9 boosters, 8 boosters? When are you going to stop with the boosters? Because you're telling people to give boosters every few months. So it's not absurd and it's not ridiculous. It's actually follows a logical projection. And this guy's lying like a used car salesman. He's dodging, obfuscating. He's pushing medicine that there's no science for. And nobody's outraged. And
the non-exaggerated part is absurd.
Yes.
Before
The non-exaggerated part is absurd. That you don't have any scientific studies for this booster for children. No.
not at this time.
Not at this time. And I would like to think that something's going to come of this. Nothing is going to come of this. Because the news media isn't going to cover that. Why? Because they're paid by Big Pharma, just like Fauci. Just like the FDA. The FDA supplies like 70% of FDA's budget. I mean, the Big Pharma supplies 70% of FDA's review budget. So, and let's watch more.
Well, that is the proof that you use. Your committees use that. That's the only proof you have to tell children to take a booster is that they make antibodies. So it's not an absurdity. You're already at like 5 boosters for people. You've had, 2 or 3 boosters. It's like, where is the proof? Now, I think there is probably some indication for older folks that have some risk factors. For younger folks, there's not. But here's the other thing. There are some risk factors for the vaccine. So the risk of myocarditis with a second dose for adolescent boys 12 to 24 is about 80 in a million. This is both from the CDC.
So if you give 1 million vaccine shots to 1 million kids, boys, 80 of them are going to get heart trouble. 80 of them. Well, how many of those kids would have developed heart trouble if they never got a vaccine? Is it 70, 75? I mean, how much more heart trouble are we getting?
There's no studies at this time.
You ready? There are studies. Here we go.
And from the Israeli study. It's also in the VAERS study, remarkably similar for boys, much higher from boys than girls and much higher than the background. The background's about 2.
2. So from 2 in a million to 80 in a million. And they have no scientific studies, and they're telling you to get it. Give it to your kids. And this is not going to be covered on the news. They might even yank this down from YouTube. I don't think I'm supposed to be able to say this.
I think you have to add that there are studies.
I think I have to say the opposite, whatever I'm saying. So there are plenty of studies, even though Dr. Fauci said there aren't.
Per million. So there is risk and there are risks. And you're telling everybody in America, just blindly go out there because we made antibodies. So it is not an absurd corollary to say if you have 10. In fact, you probably make antibodies if you get 100 boosters. All right? That's not science. That's conjecture.
And I don't understand why kids need protection from coronavirus in the first place. Again, we've already proved, even with the more deadlier strains, that kids were at a very, very low risk from coronavirus becoming serious illness or them being hospitalized. During Delta, which was a much more serious strain, it was less than the flu. The flu was more dangerous to children than coronavirus. Why are you fucking doing this? We all know why they're doing this. I can't wait for my shithead comedian friends to come around to finally stopping repeating propaganda for Big Pharma. And they're not even being paid for it. What a dupe. They call Trumpers dumb. They're the dumbest people I've ever seen. Shithead comedians repeating big pharma propaganda for free.
But Jimmy, when they come around, aren't you going to feel a little bit bad for them because their face is paralyzed?
Honestly, I won't.
Not even
if a couple of those people got paralyzed, partially, I'll say partially. Let's get back to this.
And we should not be making public policy on it.
So, Senator Paul, if I might respond to that, we just heard in his opening statement, Ranking Member Burr talk about his staff who went to Israel. And if you look at the data from Israel, the boosts, both the third shot boost and the fourth shot boost, was associated with a clear-cut clinical effect, mostly in elderly people.
So this is doesn't he sound like a vaccine salesman? Because that's what he is. And he's talking about a booster. And we showed it helped elderly people. It had a big response in elderly. We're talking about children. And he knows he doesn't have any data on that. But he just keeps talking. And he's already been outed. He doesn't have any science behind this. But he still keeps talking like he just hasn't been completely humiliated, which he has. But he knows morons like the people who watch The View or MSNBC or CNN or read the New York Times and the Washington Post. He knows morons like that are easily propagandized and will have been told to never question him. So he knows he can just keep talking and nothing will ever happen.
But also, as they gathered more data, even in people in the 40s and the 50s. So there is clinical data.
But not in children.
Well,
see, here's the thing is, you're not willing to be honest with the American people. So, for example, 75% of kids have had the disease. Why is the CDC not including this in the data? You can ask the question. You can do laboratory tests to find out who's had it and who hasn't had it.
And if you look at their vaccine trial data, they never mention natural immunity. And what he's saying is they all have it.
Disease. What is the incidence of hospitalization and death for children who've been infected with COVID, subsequently going to the hospital or dying? What is the possibility if your kid has had COVID, which is...
Now, don't you think Dr. Fauci should know this? What is the likelihood of your kid, if your kid already contracted COVID, which most people have? Your kid already had corona. What are the chances of him contracting it again and then being hospitalized? What are the chances? What's the percentage on that? Don't you think we should know that number before we start giving them boosters? Giving them more shit?
75% of the country's had COVID. What is the chance that my child's going to the hospital or dying?
If you look at the number of deaths in pediatrics, Senator, you can see that there are more deaths
of people who have had it. Of people who have had the disease.
Senator, we also know from other studies that the optimal degree of protection when you get infection is to get vaccinated after infection. And in fact, showing reinfection in the era of Omicron and the sublineages, that vaccination...
But you can't answer the question I asked. The question I ask is how many kids are dying?
He keeps dodging questions. Does that make you feel confident that the head vaccine guy won't answer straight questions consistently and has no science to back up what he's saying? That doesn't bother anybody. Go to your comedy club, local comedy club. Go to the Comedy Store. Go to the Improv. Go wherever you want to go. You're not going to see a comedian be fucking critical of this. You're going to see them be critical of me for pointing this out. Like good adult children of alcoholics, which is what most comedians are.
I mean, in fairness, most of them are talking about sex.
In fairness. And poo-poo.
Yeah, not really.
And how many kids are going to the hospital who've...
In fairness, Kurt, most of them have a joke in their act shitting on people who question the vaccine policy or the COVID narrative. Most comedians that I know go up and say something fucking stupid about COVID or stupid meaning pushing the propaganda, the establishment narrative, stupid. Not fucking poking holes in it like they should be.
The joke is like, yeah, I'm stupid, so I do the thing, and you're stupid like I am, and don't think you're not stupid. Just do the thing I did. Like, that's the gist of the joke is I choose to not know anything about this.
That's the gist of the joke is I choose to not do my research or get informed about this, and I'm trusting the government and the corporate media. That's the gist of it. I'm going to a comedy club tonight in Burbank, and I guarantee you, if there's 5 comedians on one of those shows, 4 of them will have a fucking stupid joke like that.
They're not even trusting the media. They're trusting the person they know who trusts the media, who just tells them secondhand.
Yes. So here, what? So again, he can't tell you what risk children are who already had COVID. 75% of America's already had COVID. And it's hilarious. People who haven't had COVID, they think they're better than you. I'm not kidding. But they think they're more safe or something. Like it's somehow it's a moral failing that you got COVID.
I had 2 shots and I never got it. And I do feel better than everyone.
Here we go.
Right now.
Here we go.
Already had COVID. The answer may be 0, but you're not even giving us the data because you have so much wanted to protect everybody from all the data because we're not smart enough to look at the data.
So he's saying we don't know that number of what the risk is for children who've already had COVID because you won't even give us the data. Just like they wouldn't release the data on the Pfizer vaccine trials for 75 years. 75 years.
That's unbelievable.
I know.
You released data earlier. When the CDC released the data, they left out the category of 18 to 49 on whether or not there was a health benefit for adults.
So when they released the booster data, they just gave you the booster trial data of frickin' people 50 and over. They didn't give you to people 18 to 49. They didn't give you that data. Why do you think they didn't give you that data? Do you think it's because the data showed the vaccine worked really well for those people? Now, I got to be careful because they'll take my channel down. So I got to be careful.
The time the people resigned, the heads of the vaccine department.
By the way, did you know that the 2 heads of the vaccine department at the FDA resigned over the booster program? They resigned and they got replaced. Replaced with who? People who are more pliable to this fucking big pharma narrative. They got the squeaky wheel gone. The people who were standing up against corruption and lies and criminality, they got rid of them at the FDA. So now the booster program's run by somebody who's completely corrupt. Here we go.
18 to 49. Why was it left out? When critics finally complained, it was finally included because there was no health benefit from taking a booster between the 18 to 49 and the CDC study. Another question for you. The NIH
They left that out. These people are criminal liars lying to you for big pharma profit. And and people out there are still upset at people like me who are telling you about it. When are they going to actually get pissed off at the people screwing them and lying to them about vaccines and COVID? When are they going to get mad at those people? Never. Never. Just like the people who pushed Russiagate, they're going to try to pretend they didn't. Or like Bill Gates is doing now, pretending he's thought this stuff all along. Bill Gates is now pretending, he always knew that the vaccines didn't last a long time. He always knew that the vaccines weren't going to stop contraction or transmission. He always knew. He's saying that stuff. I always knew it was a disease that it has a low fatality rate and mostly affects the elderly people, like the flu, but a little. Bill Gates is saying that now. He's trying to seem as smart as a fucking pothead comedian. And none of those people are ever going to admit they were wrong about it. Ever. People who called me anti-vax, even though I'm double vaxxed. It's like Larry Elder he's a white supremacist. That black guy.
To refuse to voluntarily divulge the names of scientists who receive royalties and from which companies.
Do you know that they don't release that? They don't tell you the people working at the FDA. They don't tell you how many of those people are getting royalties from drug companies.
Period of time from 2010 to 2016, 27,000 royalty payments were paid to 1,800 NIH employees. We know that. Not because
Not the FDA, the NIH. Correction.
you told us, but because we forced you to tell us through the Freedom of Information Act. Over 100.
So how did they find out how many thousands of royalties were paid to how many people? They had to frickin' file a Freedom of Information request because they wouldn't give them that data. That data is protected.
$193 million was given to these 1,800 employees. Can you tell me that you have not received a royalty from any entity that you ever oversaw the distribution of money in research grants?
Well, first of all, let's talk about royalties.
That's the question. No, that's the question. Have you ever overseen it?
Okay. That doesn't bother you that every question Rand Paul has asked this guy, he's lied, obfuscated, and tried to dodge? That doesn't bother you? Doesn't bother you?
First of all,
Yeah.
let's talk about a different thing other than that thing.
So you know how January 6 hearings are, it's like a pilot, like a mini series, and they're hoping it gets picked up for the fall season? Personally, I think Rand Paul interrogates Fauci is a lot better of a show. That's the show I'd want to watch. But either way, I'd still get all of those celebrities' autographs if I saw them at a restaurant. Hey, are you Tony Fauci? Wow, you were great as the criminal doctor on that thing this summer. Is it scary acting on live TV like that? Because, oh my God, I could never do that. I'd be too scared to be acting like that. And I also forget that Rand Paul is a doctor.
Yeah, right.
So that's why he does his own research. I was going to tell him, hey, Rand, what's with all the reading? You're not a doctor, but he is a doctor, so it's okay. It's okay. And I like how Dr. Fauci, not sure if he's getting royalties on one of the biggest billion-dollar opening blockbuster drugs of all time. I don't know. First of all, let's talk about this other fucking thing. There's a thing called Dr. Royalties Confidentiality. It's a sacred oath.
You have to have a Freedoms of Information Act if you want to know.
Rand Paul tweeted out, today I asked Fauci a simple question. Are there any studies that show a reduction in hospitalization or death for children that take a booster? His answer, no. Then why is the government recommending it? 91,000 likes. He's setting up a cliffhanger for next season. That's what he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
What sucks is if it doesn't get picked up, we're never going to find out the answer. Maybe if we write letters to C-SPAN, we can bring that show back. Or maybe Amazon will pick it up. Like they did with Family Guy.
Because nothing happens with these, right? The whole
No.
thing is hopefully somebody sees it and gives a shit. Is that the whole?
This is so Fauci can help sell a book. This is so Rand Paul can fundraise off it. Nothing's going to happen from this. Nothing's going to happen. Just like
So
January
Fauci's-
6th.
Fauci just needed to take one more score before he gets out of
That's
the
right.
game.
That's right. He's doing one last score. Hey, we're doing stand-up dates. Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, Chicago, Sacramento, and then San Diego, where I'm taping my new special. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our live shows. We're coming to your town, maybe.